My boss told me to keep it professional, but the way she smiled made everything between us impossible to ignore. The story begins with the narrator arriving at the office on a typical morning, coffee in hand, mentally preparing for another routine day. The office is quiet, a soft hum of computers and printers in the background. The fluorescent lights cast a slightly sterile glow, but it doesn't bother him. It's the small human moments that catch his attention. He sees her, his boss, across the room. She is 42, 43 maybe, impeccably dressed in a soft, cream-colored cashmere sweater tucked neatly into tailored trousers. Her shoes click softly on the polished floor as she moves, her posture effortlessly confident yet approachable. She's wearing a subtle perfume, something warm, slightly floral, that catches him off guard, lingering in the air after she passes. The first thing he notices, almost instinctively, is her grace. It isn't just in the way she walks, it's in the tiny, unguarded movements, how she brushes a loose strand of hair from her face, the way she leans slightly closer to a coworker while reviewing a document. She smiles occasionally, but today her smile is different, warm, and just a little too knowing, as though she's aware of him noticing. He approaches his desk, trying to focus on emails, but he keeps catching glimpses of her. When she walks past, her shoulder brushes lightly against his. There's a spark of unexpected warmth where the touch lingers for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. He feels a quick, disarming flutter in his chest, an awareness that this isn't just professional attention. A meeting is called, and he joins the small group at the conference table. She hands him a file, and their fingers brush when she passes it over. The contact is fleeting, but the sensation lingers, a subtle, electric reminder of her presence. She says softly, "Keep it professional." But then she smiles, and it's almost mischievous, a smile that doesn't quite fit the words, as if she's teasing him silently. The narrator's mind races. He's conscious of the age difference, of workplace decorum, and yet, he can't help noticing the warmth in her eyes, the softness of her voice when she speaks to him, the gentle tilt of her head as she listens. Every movement she makes seems deliberate but effortless, natural yet magnetic. He feels both respect and a quiet, growing curiosity that he doesn't fully understand yet. The scene closes with the narrator returning to his desk, the file still in hand, heart slightly off balance. The office feels the same, quiet and orderly, yet nothing feels routine anymore. Something in the air has shifted, subtle, unspoken, and entirely compelling. The day feels unusually quiet as the office empties one by one, leaving the narrator working late on a report. He senses the familiar hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, and the faint tapping of keyboards, punctuated by the occasional distant phone ring. He is so absorbed in his work that he almost doesn't notice her, until the soft click of her heels breaks the rhythm of the quiet office. She is still there, lingering near her desk, reviewing documents. Today, she wears a soft navy blouse tucked into a pencil skirt, with a thin gold chain around her neck that catches the light as she leans over the papers. There's a calm precision in her movements, but the slight relaxation in her shoulders signals that this moment, like him, is beyond the structured office routine. She approaches his desk with a file in hand, and as she leans over to point out a detail, their shoulders brush. The contact is light, accidental, but enough for him to feel a subtle warmth spreading up his arm. He notices the faint scent of her perfume again, warm, slightly woody, comforting, yet tantalizing in its familiarity. She doesn't withdraw quickly, and for a fraction of a second, their eyes meet. There's a flicker of acknowledgement, a silent conversation in the curve of her smile, and the softness in her gaze. They discuss the report, but the conversation is layered. Her tone is professional, but there's a teasing edge, subtle and playful, that makes him acutely aware of the age gap and the unusual tension it brings. When she corrects a small mistake in his work, her fingers briefly graze his hand as she points to the margin. The touch is fleeting, yet it leaves him momentarily unsteady, a flutter of heat he can't quite explain. Internally, he struggles with the duality, admiration for her experience, respect for her authority, and an emerging, confusing attraction that he can't ignore. Every gesture, the tilt of her head as she listens, the way her lips curve slightly when she speaks, the gentle cadence of her laughter, feels intimate without being overt, charged with unspoken curiosity and interest. As she moves back toward her desk, she pauses, glancing over her shoulder with a soft, almost conspiratorial smile. "Try not to stay too late," she says lightly, but the lingering warmth in her eyes contradicts the words. He returns to his work, more aware of the quiet space between them than of the report in front of him. Script notes emphasize the small, sensory moments that communicate tension: brushing shoulders, lingering eye contact, subtle smiles, and shared glances. Highlight the narrator's internal reflection, how he interprets her actions, feels heat at incidental touches, and processes his growing intrigue. The goal is to make viewers feel the quiet intensity of the first private interaction, the spark of a slow-burning attraction without overstepping professionalism. It's late afternoon, and the office has emptied almost entirely. The narrator is tidying his desk when she appears, carrying a folder and a small smile that feels slightly unguarded today. "Do you have a moment?" she asks, her voice calm but inviting. She suggests grabbing coffee nearby to go over a report. He hesitates for a split second, conscious of boundaries, but the warmth in her tone is enough to make him nod. They walk together to a quiet, nearby cafe. The street smells faintly of rain and fresh coffee, the sky a soft gray turning to evening. Inside, the cafe is cozy, wooden tables, soft amber lighting, and a gentle hum of conversation. The low background music blends with the aroma of roasted beans, creating a sense of intimacy that feels removed from the formalities of the office. They sit across from each other at a small table. She pushes the folder toward him, her hand briefly brushing his fingers. It's accidental, or maybe it isn't, and he notices the warmth of her skin. She adjusts her posture slightly, leaning in to point to a section of the report, and the distance between them shrinks just enough to make him conscious of her subtle perfume and the quiet steadiness of her presence. Conversation flows more naturally here than it ever does in the office. She talks about the project, but her words drift to personal reflections, challenges she's facing, moments of doubt, and glimpses of her life outside work. There's a softness in her voice, a vulnerability that surprises him. He realizes there's a depth behind her professional poise, a human side rarely revealed in the structured environment of the office. At one point, she laughs softly at something he says, leaning back slightly but brushing her hair from her face in a gesture that grazes his shoulder. The contact is fleeting, yet the sensation lingers, warm and disarming. He notices the gentle curve of her smile, the way her eyes seem to hold both curiosity and amusement. The age gap, the professional boundaries, they all feel real, but in this moment, they recede in importance under the weight of shared connection. He feels a quiet pull, an awareness of her presence that makes it hard to concentrate fully on the report. He is struck by how natural it feels to be near her, how the conversation, the shared laughter, the small touches, and the comfortable silences create a closeness that is both exhilarating and intimidating. As they leave the cafe, walking side by side down the quiet street, the light evening breeze brushes past them, carrying with it the faint scent of her perfume and the subtle warmth from their accidental brushes. He walks a little slower than usual, savoring the quiet intimacy, aware that something is shifting, slowly, imperceptibly, but unmistakably. Script notes focus on sensory richness, smell of coffee, warmth of touches, ambient sounds of the cafe, and soft evening light. Highlight microgestures, hair brushing shoulders, lingering eye contact, small smiles. Emphasize internal reflection, the narrator's growing emotional awareness, the gentle pull of attraction, and the thrill of shared vulnerability outside professional walls. The office feels busier today, yet in the small corner where the narrator and his boss work side by side, there's a quiet bubble of shared focus. They're tackling a time-sensitive project, a task that demands concentration, yet the air between them hums with unspoken energy. She's dressed in a fitted blazer over a soft blouse, her sleeves slightly rolled up, exposing delicate wrists. The subtle scent of her perfume, warm, almost sweet, with hints of amber, fills the space as she leans over the desk to review his notes. She points to a section in his report, and her finger grazes the back of his hand. The touch is light, almost casual, but he feels a jolt of awareness ripple through him. He clears his throat, trying to focus, but the warmth of her hand and the faint proximity of her shoulder makes it impossible to ignore the tension that has been building since their late nights and cafe conversations. Her voice carries a teasing edge. "Make sure you don't get distracted, or maybe you already are?" The words are professional, referencing the project, yet the inflection lingers, playful, teasing. He can't help but glance at her face, noticing the slight sparkle in her eyes, the gentle curve of her lips, and the subtle tilt of her head that draws his attention like a magnet. The narrator struggles internally. He admires her professionalism, her experience, her graceful confidence, and yet there's a simmering attraction he can't fully articulate. He catches himself studying the curve of her jawline, the way her hair falls naturally around her face, the faint warmth of her presence when she leans over the table. Every gesture, every glance seems layered, charged with something unspoken, and he feels both excited and conflicted. She moves around the desk, brushing past him slightly as she adjusts some papers. He notices the subtle shift of her perfume as she passes, the faint heat of her hand briefly near his arm, and the soft click of her shoes against the floor that seems louder in his heightened awareness. Their interactions are a dance, carefully professional, yet charged with small, electric moments that pull at the edges of propriety. As the task concludes, she leans back in her chair, crossing her arms with a satisfied smile. "Not bad," she says lightly, yet the corner of her mouth hints at amusement deeper than praise. Her gaze lingers on him, subtle but undeniable, leaving him caught between admiration, longing, and the pressing awareness of workplace boundaries. Script notes highlight micro-gestures, brushes of hands, lingering glances, smiles that suggest more than words, slight changes in posture. Emphasize the narrator's internal struggle, how he feels drawn in, aware of the tension, yet restrained by respect. The goal is to show the slow burn attraction intensifying through playful, non-sexual interactions, setting the stage for deeper emotional connection in the following parts. It's late again. The office is bathed in the soft glow of overhead lights, the hum of computers now accompanied only by the occasional distant traffic outside. She remains at her desk, a figure of composed elegance, but tonight there's a subtle tension in her shoulders, a quiet weight behind her usually confident demeanor. The narrator notices it immediately. He approaches, offering a gentle, tentative question. "Do you want me to stay and help?" She glances up, her eyes meeting his. There's a flicker of relief there, almost imperceptible, as if she had been holding herself together for hours. "If you don't mind," she replies softly, her voice quieter than usual, carrying an honesty that feels raw and unfiltered. As they sit side by side, working on a particularly tricky part of the project, the proximity is heightened in a way that feels both professional and intimate. The small space between them allows for subtle touches, a hand brushing against the shoulder as they lean over a document, the quiet pressure of her elbow occasionally against his as they reach for papers simultaneously. Each touch lingers just long enough to be noticed, to be felt, not provocative, but human, grounding, and oddly comforting. She sighs softly, rubbing her temples, and he instinctively reaches to place his hand lightly on her shoulder. The warmth of her skin beneath his palm is immediate and grounding, and she leans slightly, not retreating but resting just enough to communicate trust. Her eyes meet his again, and in that gaze, he senses a vulnerability she rarely allows anyone to see. It's in the slight furrow of her brow, the softness around her eyes, the way her lips part slightly as she exhales. The conversation drifts from work to more personal reflections, subtle hints of loneliness, moments of doubt, and stories of challenges she has faced. She speaks candidly, and he listens, genuinely, feeling an unexpected closeness. It's a connection born not of attraction alone, but of shared humanity. He feels protective, wanting to comfort her, yet also aware that every gesture carries weight, given their professional relationship. A quiet pause follows, and he finds himself simply observing her, the way her hair catches the soft light, the gentle rhythm of her breathing, the occasional small smile that breaks through her vulnerability. He realizes that his feelings go deeper than admiration. He cares for her emotional well-being, and the thought both excites and terrifies him. As the moment lingers, either speaking for a few heartbeats, the narrator is struck by the intimacy of silence. It's a mutual acknowledgement of connection without words, trust, understanding, and the unspoken promise of support. She straightens, offering a soft smile of gratitude, and he feels the warmth of that quiet, human bond settle in his chest, leaving him both light and profoundly aware of her presence. Script notes: focus on micro-gestures, hand on shoulder, leaning slightly, subtle eye contact, and gentle touches. Emphasize the narrator's internal reflection, growing affection, emotional connection, and awareness of boundaries. Use ambient office sounds and soft lighting to highlight intimacy without physical escalation, emphasizing emotional resonance over physicality. The office is unusually quiet tonight, the soft hum of the air conditioning mixing with the occasional click of keys. The narrator is reviewing files at his desk when he notices her standing nearby, holding a folder. She's wearing a fitted blouse tucked neatly into her skirt, her posture effortless yet commanding. Her presence feels magnetic, drawing his attention even when he tries to focus on work. She approaches him with a calm, measured grace, placing the folder on his desk. As she leans over slightly to point at a section, their shoulders brush. It's a light touch, almost accidental, but he feels the warmth radiating from her, a subtle electric charge that catches him off guard. She straightens and meets his gaze, and in that moment, something shifts, a quiet acknowledgement of the tension that has been simmering for weeks. Her smile lingers longer than usual, soft but undeniably knowing. It's the smile he's come to notice over late nights and casual touches, one that teeters on the edge of playful and intimate. "Thank you for your help tonight," she says, her voice calm, yet there's an undercurrent of something unspoken. The words are professional, but the warmth in her eyes and the slight curve of her lips hint at emotions she hasn't voiced. The narrator feels a jolt of awareness, heart racing. He's conscious of the age gap, the professional boundaries, and the unspoken rules of workplace decorum, but the pull toward her feels almost irresistible. He notices every detail: the subtle tilt of her head, the way her fingers linger near his on the folder, the quiet steadiness of her presence that makes the office feel suddenly intimate. A pause hangs between them, filled with unspoken words. He wants to speak, to acknowledge the attraction, but he restrains himself, aware of the fragile balance between professional respect and personal desire. He senses that she is aware of it too. Her eyes search his, reading the hesitation, and her smile softens further, almost teasing him silently. The air feels charged, the room smaller, warmer, more immediate. He catches himself leaning in slightly, drawn to the subtle warmth of her shoulder near his, the faint brush of her hand on the folder. There's a heightened awareness of every micro-gesture, the way her breath seems to carry a soft, calming scent, the quiet rhythm of her heartbeat as she stands close, and the lingering weight of her gaze. In that moment, he realizes that his feelings have deepened beyond admiration or respect. He wants her, not in a reckless, impulsive way, but in a way that recognizes her humanity, her vulnerability, and the subtle, tantalizing chemistry that has grown between them. Yet he also understands restraint is necessary. This unspoken tension, this careful dance of proximity and longing, has its own quiet, thrilling intensity. Script notes: highlight micro-gestures, brushing shoulders, lingering hand placement, prolonged eye contact, subtle smiles. Emphasize the narrator's internal conflict, attraction, admiration, respect, and awareness of boundaries. Use ambient office sounds and soft lighting to amplify tension, creating a palpable sense of desire restrained by professionalism. Focus on slow, deliberate pacing to let viewers feel the peak of the slow burn tension without any explicit physical escalation. It's the end of the week, and the office is hosting a small, informal gathering to celebrate a recent team achievement. The room is softly lit, laughter and quiet chatter filling the space. The narrator notices her across the room, his boss, still radiant and composed, yet tonight there's a softness in her expression, a relaxation in her posture that contrasts with her usual professional poise. She wears a soft silk blouse and a delicate necklace, the evening light catching its subtle sparkle. He approaches, holding a cup of coffee, and she greets him with a warm smile that immediately feels personal. "I'm glad you stayed late this week," she says lightly, her voice carrying the same gentle warmth that has threaded through their past interactions. Her eyes meet his, and for a moment, the bustling office fades away. There's a quiet acknowledgement in that gaze, a mutual understanding that goes beyond words. They find a quiet corner, away from the hum of colleagues. Their proximity feels natural, comfortable, yet charged with the tension of their unspoken connection. She reaches out briefly to adjust his collar or brush a stray hair from his forehead, a gesture so gentle that it communicates care without words. The touch lingers just long enough to feel meaningful, sending a quiet warmth through him. Conversation flows easily, punctuated by small smiles and shared glances. She thanks him sincerely for his support and dedication, her tone soft, her body language open and inviting. He notices how her fingers lightly touch his forearm as she emphasizes a point, a fleeting gesture, yet loaded with unspoken affection. Each movement, each glance, reinforces the sense of mutual respect, understanding, and subtle intimacy. At one point, she leans slightly closer, her shoulder brushing against his, and offers a smile that feels personal, almost private. It's a smile that speaks of trust, admiration, and a quiet, simmering affection that has grown over the weeks. The narrator senses a depth to her warmth, a reassurance that their connection is valued and safe, even within the constraints of their professional environment. As the evening winds down, they step outside together for a breath of fresh air. The cool night breeze carries the faint scent of her perfume, mingling with the crisp evening air. They linger at the entrance, neither wanting to break the moment, sharing a gentle, lingering gaze. There's no rush, no need for words, just a shared understanding, a quiet acknowledgement of their bond. The narrator feels a deep sense of satisfaction, a warmth that comes not from romantic fulfillment alone but from the trust, care, and quiet intimacy they've nurtured. The story concludes with them parting for the evening, their connection intact, emotions acknowledged, and the promise of more moments to come lingering in the air. Script notes: focus on small, sensory gestures, light touches, lingering eye contact, gentle smiles. Highlight the emotional intimacy built over time, emphasizing warmth, respect, and subtle romantic tension. Use ambient lighting, quiet office chatter, and soft evening sounds to enhance the cozy, human atmosphere. Leave viewers with a sense of emotional closure while allowing the slow burn romance to feel ongoing and real.